Oh, let me go in here on this loft alignment and open that file up. I just want to show you a couple of pieces of functionality again. Now here's my path. It's just a curved spine with three vertices in it. Here's my shape. It's a rectangle. It has a couple of letters attached to it, 2D shape. And what I'm going to do is loft that along the path. Now again, pay attention to this orientation. Here is my local x-axis. So that's what this x represents here. Here's my local y-axis. The z-axis is out toward us on this. Here's my path, and if I go in here and right-click on it, go to Properties and Vertex Ticks, get in the habit of turning that on, you'll see where the first vertex is here. So remember, z-axis passes down the path. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say Create, down into the cellar here to find lofting, get shape, and again, the orientation may not be exactly what I expected. We've already seen that I can go in and I can go to sub-object for that loft and I can rotate that. But that doesn't give me all the functionality that I might need. I want this thing to be reversed on the path, essentially. Let me show you here what I've got. I want the x-axis to be over on this side. Well, when you do a get shape, let me go into Modify. I've already got it created. When you do a get shape, if you hold the Control key down, now watch what happens to the object. I'm holding the Control key down, and I replace the shape on the path. You see that it is just flipped 180 degrees on the path. That's different than I would have gotten if I rotated it. Now the negative z local axis is passing down the path. So I've reversed it completely on that path. This can give you a lot of functionality in determining which way objects go. Now remember, I also said that the shape, its pivot point, attaches itself to the first vertex. You see right there, my object, if I turn on my grid here in the perspective viewport, my object, I don't know if you can see that or not, it's sitting halfway down in the grid plane and half out the grid plane. Well, I don't want that. I want it to sit up on the grid plane. So what I can do is I can come into my original shape. We've already seen when I adjusted the circle when it was an instance, that as I adjusted the circle, it would change the original loft object. Right now, though, I'm going to come in and I'm going to go to Hierarchy Panel, Affect Pivot Only. And I'm going to move the pivot down into this lower left corner. Well, that did not have any effect on my loft object because I didn't modify anything. I transformed. Transforms are not carried as part of that instance process. Only modifications are. What have I got to do to get this changed shape here? I've got to reloft it. I know it's early in the morning, so I'll answer the questions as I ask them. Just make things move along a little faster. So now watch what happens in the orientation of this. I'm going to leave my Control key alone this time, so it's going to flip back the other way. So I'm going to say, again, Create. Let me go into Modify. Create, Get Shape, and pick on this object again, and it flips it around, and it also brought it up so that it now sits up on my flat plane. So the pivot point is now attached here, and everything is built inside the curve rather than centered on the curve. So you've got very good control of where things take place by adjusting the position of that pivot point. But you can't do it interactively because it's not part of the instance. Okay? Now, another option that we have in that is if I go back to my original path here, and that's that line that's called loft path. Goodness, I named something logically? Huh, what a surprise. If I go in here to sub-object vertex level, let me go to wireframe up here. Whoop, we are at wireframe. Let me go to my graphics card here. There's the first vertex right there. If I come down to this vertex and select it, and then I right-click here, and I've got an option here, or it's over in the panel here somewhere to Make First. If I make the opposite end of that, the first vertex, the object flips. Do you see that? So, two ways to get essentially the same thing, either by using the control key or by changing the position of the first vertex. They are different, but in this situation they act the same. It will reverse the direction of your loft object by changing the first vertex position. Now, this happens to be an open spline. So going to either end and making that end first vertex reverses the spline. However, if this were a circular spline, I'm chasing my own tail. I do that often enough, but there's no place where you can say this is the start and this is the end because it's a circular object or it's a continuous mesh. What you have for an option there is you can go into the modify at spline level, select the spline, and there's an option down here to reverse the spline. So if it's a closed path, you can reverse the spline to get the thing to go the other way. Now, cabinets, curtain wall systems. I do a lot of stuff with lofting like this where I need to flip things by changing the first vertex or by reversing the spline. So two options that you have available to you. How are we looking on time here? Let me get into another scene here. Let me do a file reset and apply this to a more practical application and get a little bit deeper into the process of lofting and how you can make it useful. I'll go in here and say, let's make a walkway and open that file. Yeah. All right. Okay. Right here. What I'm going to have here, now, let me start this from scratch. Take me a second here. For some reason, I've overwritten my original file here. The process is here, I have got to create a sidewalk. And the client says, make it a cheap sidewalk. I don't have any money. I'll make this thing, let's go 100 inches by 100 inches. And right-click on this. This is the path that I'm building up. I'm going to go into Convert to Editable Spline, go to segment level, grab a couple of segments here and delete those. So first vertex up here, it's going to go in that direction for my loft object. I'm then going to create a rectangle that's going to represent the cross-section shape. And for this one, I'll make it 8 inches by 3 feet, so 36 inches. And right now, before I do anything, I'm going to right-click and convert it to Editable Spline. And simple loft process again, so right here, create geometry, loft this thing, get shape, and I have an L-shaped sidewalk with a pucker in the middle. Well, this is invalid geometry. This is invalid geometry. A 90-degree curve can't fit that shape in there. So I get this crossover effect that happens in here. It just can't make the turn. I can alleviate that somewhat if I go into modify for that thing and I set my shape steps. Do I have any curvature at all here? Nope. Shape steps and path steps to 0. It gets rid of that problem. So if I can get that crossover, if I don't have enough segments in here to actually cross over, I can eliminate that initial problem. The client looks at this and he says, well, that's fine, but, it really has got to be a rounded curve. I found a little bit more money, so I want to go in and round that thing off. Well, that's simple enough again. I can go back to my line object, go to vertex level. I'll select this vertex in here, and I'm going to use the fillet command here. Let me go in. I'll try a 48-inch fillet. There. Nice rounded sidewalk. Actually, let me do an undo and go to 36-inch fillet. What's the problem? Why doesn't that curve when I fillet my spline? Not enough points to define curvature. Path steps. I've set those to 0, so no curvature. Well, what do we do with that? We boost up the path steps, right? So I come in here, and select this object, and I increase the path steps back up to 5. Yeah, there we go, rounded it off nicely. However, if this were a mile of curbstone or a mile of sidewalk, I have just added a ton of geometry because I have added 5 steps between each vertex everywhere. This is indiscriminate. That cost me way too much geometry. Path steps and shape steps are intermediate steps between vertices that define curvature.